Hi everyone, I'm Janelle Nanos. I am an enterprise business reporter with the Boston Globe. I write about how the economy impacts people's lives, and I'm actually working on a story right now about job anxiety. So when they asked me to come here to do this panel discussion, I jumped right in. I was like, I'm going to be able to do, two birds with one stone here. I get all my reporting done in one session, which is fantastic. I want to introduce our panelists. I want to actually allow them to introduce themselves. If you could, each of you just introduce, share your name, where you're from, and if you could, like a little bit of a tidbit that gives us a sense as to where you are on your AI journey in terms of your workplace. Where do you start?
Hi everyone, this is Ankit. I am the global head of the People Insights and the HR Tech for the PPG. PPG is a manufacturing company headquartered in Pittsburgh with 40,000 plus employees globally. As far as the AI is concerned, we are, I would say, in an early stages of adoption of it. And I look upon it as in two lenses. One, more from the enterprise strategy perspective, that's where we are making quite a good stride. But when it comes down to specifically the HR side of the things, we have some use cases where we have implemented, but still I believe that there's a lot of work to be done and we are still on that journey.
Hi, Michelle Randall-Berry. I lead global talent for Teradyne. Teradyne is a North Reading-based company, actually, but is global. And we are about $3 billion in revenue with about 7,000 employees across the globe. We specialize in semiconductor test equipment, and we also have a robotics company. And with respect to where we are in our journey, I would say we've made a lot of progress from a talent acquisition perspective. We've also created some agentic AI to help enable some of our performance and learning capabilities, and are continuing to kind of look at how we continue to build and streamline our processes and leverage AI.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is David Wishon. I'm the global head of talent management for a company called Lionbridge, and we are a content translation and localization company headquartered out of Waltham, Mass. We have about 6,500 employees, and we are a very global organization. From an AI perspective, we're about 2.5 years along our journey in Gen AI. And because of the nature of our business being in language, we wanted to make sure that we were early adopters, that we had an accelerated plan around Gen AI adoption and different technologies. And so we've done that in the HR space specifically, but also across the organization. And I have been leading the Gen AI internal adoption program for the company, which is now really morphing into this future of work. So based on these new technologies, agentic, and just the increased levels of automation and augmentation, what the nature of our work will look like. And that's a real focus for us on the next few years and beyond, I would imagine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marissa Gladstone. I lead sales at WorkLeap, based in Montreal, Canada. So if I have any fellow Canadians or at least non-Dodgers fans in the audience, go Blue Jays, go.
I'm a Dodgers fan.
Yeah, we'll still get along, I promise.
Should clearly not have seated you next to each
Yeah,
other.
exactly. It's okay. We'll make it through. WorkLeap is a AI-powered talent management platform offering software for employee engagement, performance management, and compensation. And so by virtue of what we do and what we sell, we are all in on our AI journey. In fact, it's actually the foundation of everything that we do. It is a need to have, it is not a nice to have in how we operate, who we hire, and what our day-to-day looks like. So for us, and we are very deeply embedded in everything that has to do with AI. For me as an individual, I still have my moments of fear and a little bit that I'm still getting comfortable with and used to and making sure that I'm keeping up with all of the trends. So I come at this from the perspective both of what we sell and how we sell it, but also from how I'm using it as an individual, as a leader, and what that looks like for me day to day.
That's great. Well, before we get started, we actually wanted to survey the room and get a sense as to where everyone else was in terms of their AI journey. So by show of hands, if you could, how many of you are still trying to figure out what AI actually stands for? Okay, good. We're not complete novices. Okay, how many people would say that they're very early in their journey in terms of AI adoption? Okay, great. How many of you said maybe it's a year or a year and a half into your AI journey? Okay, and how many of you feel like you should really actually be on stage here telling us what to do? Okay, great. So it seems as if, we're still all kind of learning the process and learning the ropes, which is a great thing and a great way for me to segue into my first question, which is, these tools are so new and so fast moving, and I imagine they bring a lot of trepidation among workplaces who may fear that they're not to be trusted. What are the best practices for introducing AI tools in a way that encourages buy-in and input from your employees? David, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So when we embarked on our sort of Gen AI journey, really at the back end of 2023, early 2024, it was all about demystifying what was Gen AI. There were people with a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear. People thought there was going to be job displacement, job replacement, all of those things that were going on at that time. And so, as I mentioned, we were an organization where we've been using LLMs for a number of years in the translation space. So we had half the organization that was very familiar with it already from a language production. This was just the next gen. But when it came to our employees, they weren't so. So we had an approach where we had leadership buy-in and support. I think the biggest thing that we noticed was people really wanted permission. They wanted the go-ahead that they could use those tools. And at that time, it was really around giving permission for them to use these tools for personal reasons. And so we really started with this sense of play. It was a skills journey. It was understand, play, ideate, innovate. And then as the technology came in where we had real options, so we implemented an Azure AI sandbox where our employees could use AI securely and safely, is when we started to sort of weave in the job-specific sort of use cases and how they could be using that incredibly safely. As part of that program too, just some of the things that we implemented is in 2024, everyone within the organization had a Gen AI goal. So that was support from leadership and the executives, which carried, I think a lot of enthusiasm and momentum. And then we did things like monthly Gen AI showcases, office hours, trainings, and all of those things. And I would tell you, we trained about 4,500 of our 6,500 employees within sort of a 4 or 5 month period. But we started with like carbonara recipes and what dog should you have in a New York apartment, right? We started with fun, and then that created this momentum where people were like, we got to see, Mike actually make that carbonara recipe and then post it, on our bridge. So it was really just trying to get that sense of fun, that sense of permission. And that was really where we started.
I love that sense of permission and playfulness, because again, you can get bogged down by the nerves, and in fact, you can make people feel more comfortable about it from the outset. Anyone else want to share about their experiences along those lines? Yeah.
I would just share that we had a very different sort of approach. Ours was almost more like a soft launch, I will say, where we didn't really tell anybody we were doing it. We just did it. So in the talent acquisition space, it was more of a, hey, we've got nudges that will reach out to candidates and pull them in and make them want to apply to our jobs. And we have enhanced functionality that's going to send automatic messaging to candidates on behalf of our talent acquisition partners. And what we're going to see is that we're going to have better results in our recruiting process, and we're going to see better candidate flow and quality and things like that. And the other place where we were doing this was kind of within our learning, within our learning offerings. For our on-demand stuff, we have, again, sort of those nudges for people that, oh, you really like that, maybe you'd like this, and things along those lines. So it was kind of more of a quiet, so it's like, wow, believe it or not, we're using AI, everyone. So, it was kind of that's sort of how we approached it.
That's great. I'm curious if anyone could share examples of how assistance from AI has helped contribute to some streamlining of workflows in your organization. That's one of the first things people think of when they think of AI. Ankit, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we look at from AI point of view, there are two sides in my organization that we are kind of focusing, as I mentioned in the introduction as well, that one is more on the enterprise side. That is where we are talking about our customers, how we are kind of producing our products, plus also how we are kind of maintaining our warehouses. That's where we are using AI. Also, we are implementing a lot of tools for the employees internally as well. So just to give an example, like ChatGPT, all of us have heard about it. We have created a version dedicated for PPG, which is known as Chat PPG. So now that is one of the sources where we are able to control the sources from which we are fetching the information. So that builds the trust that we are removing the biases, we are getting the information from the accurate sources. And then it is also kind of through the education, which is embedded as part of your goals, where we are trying to make sure how people are becoming more and more efficient in terms of using those capabilities. So that's more on the enterprise initiative. But as far as the HR part goes, I would say is that we have kind of looked at from the lens that what are the biggest opportunities or which are the biggest use cases that exist for us. But later on, actually, when we went through this process, we said that, okay, why are we looking for the biggest opportunity? Why not we look from the process to process perspective to identify where the biggest opportunity actually lies rather than thinking about more departmental side of the things. So that's where we looked at the recruitment side of the things. That's where the opportunity for us was quite big. And we tied it back with one of the transformation that my company was going through, especially on the recruiting side of the things. So we tied with that and we made sure that we are, when implementing or transforming to the new technologies, we are not just doing it for a change, but also we are bringing all the benefits possible along with that change, whether it is interview scheduling, whether it is interviewing intelligence, whether it is AI agents. So that's where I think we had quite a bit of success as we transformed that work process, and we found that the amount of the candidates who are applying or the pipelines were becoming much more stronger for us, as well as the time it takes for the candidates to come to the organization reduced quite drastically. Instead of like X number of days, it reduced like X minus 10 or something like that. So that there were direct benefits that we were observing. Then of course, I think one of the things that initially was alluded is around the future of the work. And that's where I think a significant focus that we are putting, which is talking about what skills are today, what skills do you require maybe a couple of years down the line, depending upon your business plan, and as well as providing the opportunity for the people internally to develop yourself to be ready for the future skills so that you are not becoming redundant, and that gives you a kind of a security in your mindset. So that's how we are kind of progressing.
Okay. One of the interesting ways, and you sort of highlighted this, you touched on this, is thinking about how AI tools can increasingly be used for self-assessment and for goal setting in organizations. Can you talk about how you're beginning to use these tools in your offices? And again, what conversations are you having with your teams about how the tools will be integrated into their workflow? How do they know that a robot's not going to make a decision about how well they're doing in the workplace and the human still connection is there? Do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that people struggle with as an employee writing a self-assessment or as a manager writing an assessment for one of their team members is not having recency bias in there. So we're all, you're going through the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months of an employee's performance, and it's not always so easy to collect everything that they've done. But that's where AI is incredibly helpful, because what it can do is it can access all of your internal resources if you're using the right tools and platforms with the right security, to actually pull the various projects that people have been working on, as well as assess how they've been performing against their individual goals. And so now you're getting a lot more of a robust look at how the employee's been performing, so you can get all of those important inputs, all of the quantitative data that is necessary to provide that analysis. And then you can apply the layer of critical thinking, of the human approach, of truly applying that empathy and that true people component of things without worrying about, did I forget about the project they did 3 months ago? Did I forget about perhaps the concern that we had with them 2 months ago? This gives you that holistic view and really allows you to focus on what matters. We use AI. Our tool that we have in-house is a performance management tool powered by AI. And for me, we do quarterly performance reviews, and this was an incredible burden. Performance reviews can take several hours as you're trying to be as holistic and thoughtful about your approach. And so what our tool allows us to do and what other AIs allow you to do is to pull in that information much faster. So now you get that summary and all you have to do is add in the pieces that are true to you and true to your relationship with that person and true to the tone and the manner with which you address that individual. And so taking performance reviews from a 2 to 3 hour process per person to being 20 minutes. This allows you to focus on like the true content, the true relationship building of this, and really make actionable outcomes coming out of it. And so I think by allowing yourself to sort of use AI to take out the tedious tasks of collecting all that information so that your brain power can go towards that which truly drives value is where you can find that great benefit in the tools that you're using.
It's fascinating. Michelle, do you want to weigh in here too?
So again, sort of from a different perspective, we actually built our own agent in using a co-pilot agentic AI. And we've been using that to sort of assist our employees when they're preparing for performance reviews. Because the biggest challenge we've found with employees is, how do I talk to my manager about my career, about my performance, about how do I write an individualized development plan? How do I get ready? And so it's been a great experience because we've also been able to ask for feedback from our employees as they're using our agent and asking it questions. Because as you're using agentic AI, I'm sure many of you know this, you have to teach it what we want it to do. So it's actually been an incredibly collaborative experience and something that we're excited about kind of carrying forward and continuing to do.
Great. You also mentioned hiring, which I think I'm hearing a lot about these days, particularly as I'm working on this job anxiety story. So tell me, I want to hear it from the source. I'm hearing a lot about how AI is making the hiring process actually much harder for both workers seeking jobs and HR managers seeking candidates. How do you cut through the noise and ensure that you're not losing that human connection in the process of recruiting new talent? Michelle, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. What I'll say is no, we haven't figured everything out because there's sort of the good and the bad that comes with AI in the TA space. The good part is if you've done the work to sort of ensure that you know what's important to you in the talent acquisition process, you know what skills you're trying to acquire, you know that this is a specific, these are the specific kind of locations where you're hiring, these are the places you need to go. The more you can educate around, the tools around what it is you're trying to solve for, the better it goes. But we still are having to deal with, candidates that aren't real, and we still have to kind of, continue to work through some of those situations. And I don't know if anyone else would want to.
Yeah, I want to know more about the fake candidates. What's happening there?
I'll jump in there. I think on the candidate side, what's interesting is all these technologies are available to everyone around the world. And so if they want a resume saying that they're a astronaut scientist, they could create a resume that fundamentally does that. So I think with the increase in these technologies, you're seeing a number of things happening. You're seeing resumes that are not necessarily truthful, and it could be either imposters or dreamers that you're seeing. In interviews themselves, people are sitting there with LLMs open and they're leveraging those technologies. And you're seeing that time and time again. And it could be so someone's articulating their experience or their background or what they could do more effectively, answering questions better than they could normally. But you're also seeing it as well in the translation space too. So like people are being helped immediately with translation in that moment. And so it's really changing the game for the way that an organization is, evaluating and assessing talent. And then it goes even one step further, that what we refer to in our space, not only from talent acquisition, but we also have about a 250,000 person community, is what we refer to as collusion, which is people who might be setting up centers powered by agentic, powered by these technologies to pretend to be humans that they're not. And so what we're seeing is the evaluation of these new technologies, whether that is identity verification technologies, whether it's video conferencing that can identify whether there are other apps that are being used and running simultaneously. And so that space is something that it's changing, and it's kind of we're sprinting in the way that candidates are too. And then the last piece is they're using these crawler and resume distribution tools. So I really feel for people who are on the market when I can leverage a tool in the outside world and I can apply to 200 positions with the click of a button, right, with a faux resume. So what we're seeing on the TA side is just that large applicant numbers, and we're seeing higher and higher levels of collusion or that first level of filtration that we're doing. And so one of the things we've implemented is an identification verification tool and an email verification tool as well, which would tell you how old someone's email address is. Did they just create this yesterday? Or did they create it 5 years ago and it's associated to 20 other user login addresses, right? These are the technologies that are there in this new world in order for you to sort of, not combat's the wrong word, but to make sure that you can, obviously work within that space and that you're able to detect that through technology and through automation. So what comes through to the recruiter are those viable, authentic